Hello, hello. You like my new setup? I'm actually sitting where I normally sit, where you are, looking out at that view. Got the church behind me over my shoulder. Maybe that's a bit symbolic, I don't know. A good omen, I hope, because I'm going to be talking about the Christian mystics. All right, that's where we're going to end up today. But I'm going to start with describing three levels of being, or levels of being a human being. Okay, and I'll be referring back to my own life and what I'm saying. I'm not here to preach, I'm not here to try and influence you, just like making these videos because I love sharing my own experience and what I'm learning. So three levels of being, and these can be levels that we start off at. They can be like progressive levels, but they can also be levels that, just being aware of them, you can catch yourself slipping back into one of these levels. And so during the course of a day, we could be in all three different levels. Let's see how these resonate with you. So the first level is the victim level. I'm not talking about people who are always in victim mode, feeling poor me and sorry for themselves and all of that. I'm just meaning when we perceive ourselves to be in a world where things happen that there's a disconnect between ourselves and what is happening, and we're just on the receiving end of events and circumstances of life. Life throws things at you and you're a subject, a kind of passive subject, I suppose. It's a scary place to be. You have to just learn to survive. We fall into this default way of being protective of ourselves and our families, and there's no greater meaning or purpose to it. So this is what we might call existentialism. For an existentialist or an atheist, it's just all that we see with our five senses is all there is. And there is nothing more beyond that. There's no deeper meaning, there's no unseen realm, and there's certainly no God or no divine counsel. It's just, this is it, really. And I just think that must be a really difficult place to be. I thank God daily that I'm not an existentialist, because I think it's quite depressing, quite nihilistic. And you hear this term existential angst, which is when people find themselves questioning the meaning and purpose of life. And it can be a springboard or a catalyst for finding something more substantial and meaningful and a turning point in life. But many people are stuck at that stage, and you just have to get on, make the most of it. And it can lead to stoicism, that you are going to just find some values that work for this life, but this life alone. There's no higher agenda, because there isn't anything higher or greater. This is as good as it gets. The next stage is more empowering, and that is mastery. So you might think that there has to be more than this, and you start to discover that you are a multidimensional being, that you are body, mind and spirit, that there's more to you than just the physical, and there's more to reality than just the physical. And this is sort of the introduction to metaphysics. And you may read self-help books that talk about how you can attract things into your life that you want by changing your thoughts, by taking control of your thoughts and directing them in a certain way using affirmations. You can, if you like, manipulate the world out there. It's not out there really, it's a reflection of you inwardly. And if you just change your thoughts about yourself and focus what you want, focus your desires, you will magnetically draw them to you. So this is true. This is real. There's nothing wrong with this. I'm not putting any value judgments on any of these levels of being. It's about awareness and how we're approaching life. And if we have that level of awareness, then we're likely to have a happier life, because we'll start to think more positively about what we want to change to be happier, what we want to bring into our lives. And, there's tons of material out there on YouTube about this, how to get rich quick, how to find your soul partner, your soulmate, your twin flame, whatever. And, you can do these things, and they do work. They do work. I have used this method, if you like, using affirmations to learn new habits, let's say. So I might have always had a scarcity mentality and brought that with me from childhood into my early adulthood. And I used to save and not spend very much because I was just scared of running out of money or not having enough. And then I used an affirmation. I still remember it. Let me just try and think what it was. Money flows freely into my life as much as I need. Something like that. Money flows freely into my bank account or into my life. I have as much as I need. Anyway, the point was I used that when I was, single person, suddenly found myself on my own with a young child to bring up, didn't have a permanent job. I was just doing supply teaching. And, it was an anxiety each month to be able to pay the bills, to know if I'd have enough to pay the bills. And I used that. I used it also for meeting somebody, meeting my soulmate. I really wanted that. My heart is open to give and receive love. And I am experiencing, I can't remember. I wrote them down in journals. My heart is open to give and receive love. And I am receiving or experiencing perfect fulfillment in my life, something like that. So you can write them. You can, it helps you to get yourself focused about what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and to take control of your life. So we're one step higher than being a passive recipient of life, which was where we were at victim mode. Oh yeah, something's just come to mind. At victim level, you have this unawareness of the powers that are influencing everything that does show up in your life. And I just think of the Carl Jung quote, just came to mind. He said, "Unless we make the unconscious conscious, it shall direct our lives and we shall call it fate." In other words, when you start to understand about the unconscious, take it seriously, you'll realize that bringing your conscious awareness to it, understanding it and working with it can change things. Otherwise, it's just going to go to default. And the unconscious, of course, is, the collective, the collective consciousness that we're just immersed in when we become incarnated into this life as human beings. So unawareness of that means that all these powerful patterns and archetypes that are out there in the collective unconscious, and also our own patterns that we inherit subconsciously, our own what do they call them, complexes. I'm not really familiar with the psychological language of it, but there are patterns that we learn in childhood and that we learn from our parents and the role models we have, and experiences of life, especially when we have been hurt and then we have a coping resistance to that. So we're putting up barriers to try and protect ourselves, and we can be repeating patterns that deny us a richer, fuller experience of life and joy. So victimhood is sort of putting this protective barricade around yourself so that you're keeping yourself safe, preserving yourself, but you're almost cutting yourself off from the fullness of life. Then we move into I'm a little bit braver now, I understand a bit more, I'm going to go and really experience life, and I'm going to have a good life, and I'll draw into my life all the things that I want. And that's really good. And you probably will have more things in your life because you'll be happier, you'll have more confidence, you'll be a more positive person and a less fearful person. And so good things will start to show up just by magnetic, vibrational attraction and so on. All of this is metaphysics. And by that I mean there is, just as in the physical world there's physics, material world we have physics, we have in the what is unseen to us because we're limited by the five senses, there's still universal laws that are like, to do with physics, metaphysics, bigger physics, and it cause and effect, What you put out there comes back, as within, so without, and all of that. And you could go through your whole life at that stage because you can then feel a little bit more in control, or sovereign. That's a word we use, isn't it? That we can be sovereign. And the limitation of that is in terms of its vision. I would say that its scope of vision is limiting and ultimately fails to satisfy. Because once you have everything in place, once you're no longer really worried about money because there is always enough, once you have your friendship group so that you feel supported, emotionally supported, you have maybe a partner so that you can have a family yourself or just feel emotionally fulfilled and your needs are met and all of that, then you're happy. You've got the house that you want and you've got the job that you want, you're fulfilled in your work. So you can go tick, 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 tick all the way down your list. And then what? And then what? You may come to a point where you yearn for something that's bigger in terms of meaning and purpose. Come back to that existential question. What is the meaning and purpose of my life? Did I leave that state of bliss, incarnate into this world just to try and get through it and to get through it comfortably so that I feel safe and okay and I'll get to the end of it and say, phew, thank goodness that's over? Is that what it's about? Or is it about some greater mission? Did I come in with a mission that will fulfill some ultimate sort of eternal aspect or component of me? Is it spiritually fulfilling, I suppose? So we could say, body, mind, spirit. The first victim place, body, just protecting the body, protecting the material, physical you, including your mind and your well-being and your happiness. But it's just really small in its vision. Then the next part is the soul. We're looking after yourself holistically, perhaps a bit more. And then we have the spiritual. So the soul is fulfilled by meaningful relationships and satisfying work and so on, and pleasant surroundings. You can create your own little heaven, but everyone else is over there doing their thing. And you, as long as you are somehow protected from too much of what's going on out there impacting you, you're okay. The spiritual part of ourselves won't be satisfied with that. It yearns always for something deeper and more fulfilling. And when we have a spiritual awakening, the light goes on, the heart is opened and the heart is expanded so that it's not enough and okay to say, well, that's out there, that's happening over there. This becomes something that burdens, that word come to mind, burdens you. There's a calling to do something about that. Now that higher vision can lead us into work that's, altruistic work, charity work, activism in the world, to try and put right the wrongs of the world and make the world a better place, because you have a sense that we're all interconnected. And whether or not that's motivated by spiritual beliefs, religious beliefs, or just because the drive to do that is strong and you have to follow it, otherwise you feel frustrated and unfulfilled. But a spiritual awareness will ultimately, no matter where you start, whether you're from whatever religion or none, it will always bring you to an awareness that we are all interconnected. The ground of our being is consciousness, and it's the same ground of being in me that is in you, that is in the person over there, the person in the far away, in that land where there's fighting, where there's suffering, where there's hunger and famine, starvation. All different types of horrors are going on. And you can't not be moved or called to respond. This is when we are in the third level of being. We enter the third level, which is to set aside the self and to live for the greater good of all, to want to be a servant for the greater good of all. And so we call it the servant king level. Why do I call it servant king? Because I associate it with Christ. That's the Christ path. And so we can follow the Christ path, which is incarnation into this life. We leave that place of bliss and we descend, take on physical bodies. And then what do we do when we get here? If we wake up and have a remembrance of home, we remember that we've come with a mission. And the mission is to wake everyone else up and to help lead everyone home, to call everybody home back for that family gathering. And that we are actually all each other. We're all in the same family. We're all those fractals of light just scattered out. That's the divine in us. And this is the meaning when Jesus said, if you give a cup of water to a little child, you do it for me. When you feed the hungry or when you clothe the one that's naked, you're doing it for me. He wasn't meaning you'll make me happy because you're being a good person. You know, you're keeping the religious. You're being a very holy person, being a good person rather than a selfish person. It doesn't really mean that. This is a metaphysical statement. It's saying, I am that person. The I am is in that person as it is in me and as it is in you, as it is in all of us. It's the same ground of being. So ultimately there is the seed within all of us, the divine, that is a calling and will call us to that higher level. At the higher level, you just know that you're not just working on Team Jill. I'm not just working here. I'm not here just for Team Jill, getting myself through my life to the end of it, making sure I survive. Nothing really terrible happens, you know, and I die a peaceful death, a good death, and well done. But it's an awareness that there is this team that are all working for the great mission of humanity, which is to gather the nations back in, to bring all the scattered children back home. And in doing that, you're not alone. You're working with a divine council. And you have help in that. And it's a cooperative effort. And you start to live with an awareness of the unseen a lot more. You'll be going about your daily life in the material, but you are aware that you are one of the heavenly family, working for a heavenly end.